What's up everyone, welcome to ZP Productions. I'm Richard here, and on my hand here is the RF 35mm f1.8 STM IS macro lens for the EOS R system. It's a quite interesting lens, and today we will be doing an unboxing and some initial impressions of this lens here. So let's move on. So as I said, this will be an unboxing video, and on my hand is the RF 35mm again. This lens itself is the cheapest Canon prime you can get for the EOS R system. Let's take a look at how Canon wraps it up, and of course some initial impression of this lens. Just to say, this is not the first time I handled this lens itself. Previously, I actually borrowed it from SLR Revolution and did a shoot and some initial shots with it. However, that shoot I can't share here, but I can definitely share my initial impressions of this lens. And if you're interested to listen, just watch on to the end. So for box opening, I'll open this lens box here. And you notice I've been holding this with one hand because it's really light. I probably can't do it with the 50mm or the 85mm. Those are quite heavy. So let's open up and see what's inside this lens box. Firstly, there is the standard receipts and documentations. I'll be putting it here. Next, let's take a look here. Now, being the cheapest lens, Canon make it well known when you just open it. Firstly, there's no other paper or supporting element inside. This is just a bubble wrap. And inside this bubble wrap, there is the 35mm lens. Wrapped in a plastic. So the 35mm is wrapped in a plastic itself. It's just like this. So straight away, I will tell you that Canon is letting you know that this is the cheapest RF prime you can get. Now, of course, when we buy a lens, we're not going to care about the packaging too much. Packaging is just the initial impression. It's just not really the greatest impression here. So let's take a look at this lens from the physical aspect first. That's something I can definitely talk about today. Firstly, this is not a weather sealed lens. There is totally no gasket. No form of rubber gasket around this. If you've seen any of the RF primes, you will actually see those gaskets. Secondly, this lens is made of plastic and a metal mount here. So this plastic is quite common. I think almost every other Canon lenses use the plastic. All the RF lenses are plastic mount, plastic bodied lens. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just you can feel that this is just slightly cheaper, I guess. And then it has a focusing ring, which probably not the greatest ring in the world, but not the worst off anyway, because it's a mirrorless lens. You have nothing you can do with it. Just spins infinitely here, as you can see. And then there's a control ring. I find that this control ring compared to the other RF lens is a bit more loose. But then again, I don't actually put any functions on it, so it doesn't really affect me too much. And there is two switches here, the AF/MF switch and the stabilizer on and off switch. And that is pretty much it for the physical dimension in terms of things that I can see here. Now let's take a look at what happens when I mount this lens on the camera. So what I have on my camera here, this is the EOS R with a 50mm f1.2 lens. And if you want to see the review, look up at the link above. This lens is phenomenal. I've been using it non-stop for some period of time recently. And once again, I want to iterate something great about the EOS R. You know, this shutter thing that closes down prevents dust. I wonder why no other manufacturer makes it. This is probably one of the greatest things of the EOS R. It is good, makes your sensor less dusty. So let's mount this lens here and let's take a look at its operations. So mounted on the EOS R, the first thing you'll notice is that when you try to focus it, because I used this lens before, I can just straight away show you some of its key functions. When you focus it, you notice, if let's say I focus something really close, this is something you will notice. This lens do extend significantly. This is about a 1.5 cm extension. Normally, lenses of this type do not extend much, but because this lens have a macro function, 0.5 times macro, and because of this macro function, it extends quite a bit. And if you do in normal range, it actually doesn't really extend much. If you should just normally notice it, focusing something far away, it doesn't really extend much. It's only when I focus really close and then the extension appears. So just to note that this lens does extend and you keep your hands away from the extension itself. Now, let's talk about the macro function of this lens and how does it impact it. 35mm with macro is quite rare. In fact, if you go online and see, unless it is a macro lens itself, most 35mm, f1.8, f1.2, f1.4, f2 normally do not have such a function. So it's quite nice that actually Canon built this function into this RF lens itself. But this macro has a shortcoming. Yes, it does shoot very close. The image quality is actually pretty decent. I'm not talking about image quality here. I'm talking about its focusing, because as I said earlier when I talked about the body, it has an AF/MS switch, it has a stabilizer on and off, but it has no macro limitation function. So when this lens tries to focus, especially in low light conditions, one of the biggest reasons why it probably feels slow when you focus is because it's trying to rack through the entire macro range and back, making it slow focusing at certain times. And this lens is an STM lens, not a USM lens, not a ring USM lens. So STM isn't the fastest focusing mechanism in the world, and it's not an LM lens like linear motor or what's not. So definitely you're getting penalized, especially if low light, where it starts racking through the macro to full range, it's going to go crazily slow. And that's the experience I have when I shot indoors. At most of the time, it will just focus really quick because the EOS R system is quite good. But sometimes, just sometimes, you know, especially in backlighted conditions, the camera tries to rack through the entire focus to actually find where the focus is, and it makes it really, really slow because it goes from macro all the way to full range to find the perfect location to focus on. So this is something to note. This lens isn't the fastest autofocus lens in the world, even on the EOS R. Okay, so I've talked about the physical dimensions, its macro capabilities. Let's talk about image quality quickly. Today, as I say, I have no images to show you here because I can't post on that shoot itself. However, I will tell you that the image quality is pretty decent across the entire range. It goes from, the center is really, really sharp, and the corners are pretty decent. So overall, it's quite nice. And as I said, with the everything else, image stabilizer, macro, it is quite a nice lens itself. And last thing I want to cover off is the image stabilization. So when I was doing a real shoot, this thing is a lifesaver because it allows me to hand hold my shots easily at 120 to get the entire shoot done. 120 is the lowest you can go with a live model because humans do shift a bit here and there. 120 is pretty much as stable as they can hold their poses. That is pretty much it for image quality. I don't have really much thing to talk about because I only use it for a shoot, and I can't post it here to further elaborate anything. So once I have them up, I will actually do a follow-up review for this lens. Now, you may be asking me, why did I get this lens only today? That's because I own the 2870 f2, and you can check out my review here. And the 2870 f2 is a very good lens. The only shortcoming is it's extremely heavy. With the EOS R, that thing weighs like 2.3 kg in total. While this setup here weighs 1 kg, pretty much lightweight and easy to hold. And this thing has IS and a slightly faster f1.8. It also has a slightly less vignetting. The 2870 is very strong vignetting at the corners itself. So overall, this lens, if you ask me, performs slightly better than the 2870 at 35mm. I would say it's not because it overlaps it. I would probably purchase it much quicker. But in recent years, in recent days, I have a more need for this lens. Firstly, I do a lot more indoor shoots, and you can check my Instagram. These indoor shoots require a 35mm, and 2870 without IS and being heavy is quite hard to utilize indoor where light is a bit limiting. While this lens itself will probably do the job quite nicely with IS and a f1.8 aperture. The next thing is I do some of the children and kids photography or infant photography, and sometimes I need to do some macro shots on the head, the hand, the eyes, the ears. And 35mm is a very common range to use. It would be nice if I can just macro directly with the lens. And 0.5 times macro is more than enough if you look at children or maybe babies, where 0.5 probably will give you a full coverage of the face on the frame itself. More than enough macro than you ever need for a lens for shooting babies. So I actually purchased this lens here for two of its key functions. Firstly, a 35mm with IS, and secondly, the macro function, and that is the reason why it's with me today. Now, this is of course the initial review, and I won't talk so much of is it worth it to buy. This is a $500 lens. I would say, as if you're using the EOS R mount, it's brainless. Why? Because firstly, this is faster than the EF mount version, which is the 35F2IS. Is 0.8, it is slightly faster. Secondly, it without the adapter, it is a lot smaller, a lot more compact. And lastly, it has a macro function. And in terms of price, they are not much different. They are really, really close. You can go BH Photo and check it out yourself. So if they are close, why do you use it? So might as well get the 35mm f1.8 RF lens for the EOS R, which is a lot better if you ask me in all sort of value proposition. But that is about it for my initial impression and of course the unboxing. Once again, some empty box here. I hope you enjoy this. See you next time. Do like and subscribe if you like my videos, and follow my channel because I will definitely do a lot more reviews in the future. Thank you everyone. See you next time. Bye bye.